Good morning. My name is Scott Redler, Chief Strategic Officer at T3Live.com.
Good morning. My name is Chelsea Oliver, and welcome to today's morning call. We have mixed markets around the world today. Europe broadly lower, while Asia seeing green arrows. Scott, how does this landscape look overseas?
Well, they're not having like continuity right now, which is no big deal. But everything's kind of been trading on their own merits, regardless. You know, you do have Europe down 1% across the board, maybe because you have the big ECB meeting on March 10th, so people might be taking some profits ahead of that. If you look at the chart of the EWG, you'll see, this is a basis for Germany. It did have a nice move. It broke above all the moving averages and gave you a little bit of follow through. So at this point, I feel like a pullback would be decent here for Germany, and I think that holding 24.11 would be good. In Asia, you look at the FXI. I know that China came out and said that their growth is going to be 7.5%, or no, sorry, 6.5 to 7. So I feel like some guys, thought it could have been lower at this particular point. As long as I would say the FXI holds above this spot, which is around 3160, I would think that this could, be somewhat constructive for potentially higher prices, over the course of the next few weeks.
S&P futures are down 8 to 10 handles. Scott, this must be great news for you since you went out short Friday, right?
Yes, you must know that I'm a very uncomfortable short, so coming in today with the futures down 8 to 10 handles, it starts the week on the right note. And I feel like, it was the right play to do considering, oscillators hit, plus 90, which I've never really seen before. So I did tweet out on Friday that I was getting short the spiders somewhere around 240. And if you look at the chart here, you'll see the reason why. Look at the size of the move that we've seen in the S&P right up into resistance. So with that being said, you had your double bottom here. You had your quick up move that came into resistance. Okay, just to show you the type of action we've had. You had your red dog reversal right here, which was a nice buyable spot. And then we've been following the 8-day all the way up. But look how extended we got from the 8-day, so I thought it made sense to be short. So at this particular point, I always cover a little bit pre-morning call, so I covered some this morning. So we'll see, how does 1986 hold? That is Friday's low. A break and close below that, and then perhaps we do get a move to the 8-day moving average, which has been a much better buy than being extended from it. So I would write down 1986 and then write down this 1969 level, which is the 8-day, and as long as this trend continues to hold, I think you have to be opportunistic with the market.
And if you look across all sectors, most seem overbought. So Scott, what would a healthy pullback look like?
I would think almost kind of like the S&P, where we're extended from the 8-day, so maybe a pullback to those. So let's show some of those charts. The Russell has been very feisty to the upside. I put a chart out on the IWM when it was looking like it was going to break above this spot. And look at the move. First remember, the digestion above 99, and then you had this move all the way up back into some pretty significant resistance. That's where it broke down from. So it made some sense to sell into that. I'm actually short a little, IWM, and here is where the 8-day is now. So the 8-day is all the way down at 105. So I think if we could go sideways and let the 8-day catch up, I think that'll be somewhat constructive. But we'll see, if it just winds up falling apart. You look at the banks, the XLF. It too, had a nice move, but it got a little extended. There are places to buy and places to be careful. This was your tight pattern that went to the upside, and now we'll see, what type of pullback. So first things first is, Friday's low, which is 22.11, and then, can it hit the 8 and 21 day, which has been, key support. I would say one sector that doesn't look so good is the bios. So we'll see how they handle this week. If we're going to have some weakness, maybe the bios will be one of the first sectors to break back down. If you look here at the bios, you shall see that you have this ascending tight channel here, and if it were, if the IBBs break and close below this 261, I would think some pressure happens here. So watch the bios pretty closely to see if they still show some some relative weakness.
What about high beta technology? They didn't really rally towards the end of the week. What are your thoughts there?
Well, they've been kind of lethargic during the last week and a half of this move. The real strength has come from like the bean down names. They've come, from the steel names. They've come from, some of the oil names. And oil actually is up a little bit today, but the futures don't care. So we're seeing a little bit of a decoupling from, oil and our markets, which, remember we talked about the conversation that it went from, can we hold 30, which the market was obsessed with, to will we hit 40. So I think at this point the market doesn't care that much. So before I get into high beta tech, let me just show you the XLE, because I didn't do it on the last one. The XLE, remember this 58.20 we talked about? That gave you a nice 3-day move, and now here we are, extended from the 8-day. So just like everything else, we'll see if the 8-day holds. But if you go to high beta tech land, like Chelsea mentioned, we had a 3-day move, and not saying they fell apart, but it didn't participate. We like when tech or high beta tech leads. So at this point, let's see how we handle the 8-day here. You have this rising wedge, and if this were to break to the downside, maybe the market gets a bigger pullback than a shallow one. So I would write down 564-ish as key support here. So we'll see if maybe Amazon could go green. You go to Google, very similar. Google took 3 days off while the market actually had some positive composure. So we want to see if this, ascending trend line holds. So I would write down this spot for Google. Google, you have 725-ish. So we want to see if 725 holds. If it doesn't, chances are, you might see more of a discount. But if high beta tech winds up going green first today, I think that it could take some of the the question marks away from whether or not they should be sold or just traded very a bit more carefully.
Social media were on the move last week, so this week will they be a focus for you?
Yeah, I would say there was a lot of good trades last week that we focused on. So we'll see if we get some setups again this week. Usually Facebook is the one that gets action, but I feel like Twitter had more action last week. So just like other names in high beta tech, you look at Facebook. Facebook closed on the lows on Friday, right on the 8-day. So I think it's going to be important to see, does strength come in, and does we see some relative strength today with the futures down, or does something like Facebook break this? Because if it breaks and holds below 108, some guys might even want to be short here. So that's level 1 support. Here's level 2, right around this 106.39. You look at LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn's been quiet. It's hard to trade. There's not a lot of volume, but it's hanging in here, getting a little tight again. So I think some guys that like LinkedIn are looking at it closely, because if we do get an additional move, maybe this tight range breaks one way or another. So for it to get back above into this gap, this is your resistance. And in order for that to happen, I would say it has to hold above this pivot here, which is 114. So 114 is your support, and then this would be to the upside, like I mentioned before. Twitter gave us an additional trade. For those on the VTF, you guys saw that I haven't been in Twitter in a while, and I actually got involved here when it broke above this nice inside range, and then it put in a bit of a topping tail on Friday. So at this point, I would say maybe get a buyable dip down into the 18s again. It was as high as 2032. So there are select trades in social media names as well.
So far, metals have been the place to be in 2016. How are they looking this morning?
It's actually, a lot of traders are probably going to be caught a little bit, because on Friday you had this move to highs, and then it sold off. It gave you what we call a topping tail. That's why I sold. I was long the GLDs for most of last week. So I was like, I've had enough with the GLD for now. It's had a big move. Some guys were like, Redler, why don't you get short the metals? I'm like, I don't need to be shorted, but at least let me take my trade. And if you look at the GLDs, you'll see the reason why. Look at this, topping tail here. This was a decent topping tail, which should have at least got you out of your longs, maybe, considering it got extended from the 8-day. Some guys might have got short, so they could be caught. I would say if you were short, just take a little care. This is your pivot, 122.37. See if the metals open up and fade. But if it trades through here, I think some guys might get squeezed out. I was hoping that we'd see a pullback to here that could be buyable, but at this point we shall see. If you look at silver, silver also has been lagging a little bit, so I'm thinking it could play catch up. This has been very, very beaten down over the course of the past year or so, from 30 all the way down to here, but it's above the 200-day right now. So at this point, we'll see what kind of pullback you have in SLV. I would say if it could hold. Actually, it's probably up a little bit today. Here is that recent resistance. I would say if it holds above this gap from Friday and stays above it, it didn't sell off as much above this 1465. Maybe there's a bigger move here above 15. You did see a big move in copper. Remember I mentioned all these names that went nuts before. This FCX. Just people like, how do you get involved in a name like FCX when it's so beaten down, etc.? Well, if you look here, you'll see that, you had some igniting type moves. Like this was move number 1, and then it got tight again, and then gave you a move to the 200-day. So see what's next. And look at this X. You want to talk about igniting bars? Look at the size of the igniting bar right here. You do not short against that. Maybe you look for a buy, and it wound up giving you a move from 10 to almost 14 and change. So that's 40%. So now we'll see if they let these things breathe a little bit. I would not be chasing them up here.
Is there anything else that we should take away from today, or any closing thoughts that you can tell everyone?
Well, it's Monday. The markets have come a long way. A lot of people think that they can't go higher, but the markets will always do probably what the least amount of people want. I would say today, if you do come in short, maybe you take a little bit off, like I did this morning with this. I think the spiders are below 199.50, and then we'll see if the market digests above Friday's lows, or do we see some real weakness set in, and do we take them out and then get to the 8-day, which would be fine. That would be healthy. There's this pain trade right now where people might have sold their longs too early and flipped short, and that's why you're in pain, because you're upset you don't have your longs and you start losing money short. So at this point, it would be healthier to see some kind of corrective move the next few sessions to bring us back to just say the 8 and 21 days to get people more on balance. You know what? I forgot to mention Apple, because Apple was a good trade for a lot of guys on the VTF. I got long it also. It was a nice one above here. I'm not in it now, so I would think if Apple's any good, perhaps it holds this 101.50 now and goes sideways. But even stocks that have been beaten down, that if you sold them here, they do give you setups when they get back in play. So I think, Chelsea, the name of the game is now a little carefulness with setups. Maybe we'll make a little bit more money short, but then I do think maybe we can go higher. So just don't have short on the brain all week.
Right. Okay, great. That's it for us today. Everyone have a great trading day and a great Monday. See you tomorrow.